I'm the Assistant Properties Director of the Utah Shakespeare Festival, and today we are going to learn about how to make a prop list. There are several things you have to consider, but first you need to read the play, just so you know what's happening in the play. And then you need to read the play so we can figure out what the props are. So we're going to look through a little bit of an example of that today. I'm going to share my screen, and then we will go through a few things. Okay, so how do you make a prop list? Well, here is an example of one we use at the Shakespeare Festival. Now, at the Shakespeare Festival, our prop lists have a lot of information on them because of how many shows we do at a time and how many people are working on the shows. So this first column here where it says number, that's not really necessary. The things that are important are the act, scene, page in which the prop occurs in the play, what the prop is, how many there are, who uses it, and then some notes about it, which you can see examples of here. At the Shakespeare Festival, we denote things such as if it's a furniture prop, a dressing prop, a consumable, which means that it is destroyed every night or every couple nights or eaten or something like that. And then if it's a weapon or a costume prop, because at the Shakespeare Festival, a lot of things are kind of a gray area. And so we have discussions about who's taking care of it. And we have a costume crafts department who takes care of a lot of the things that some other places would be a prop. So that's something you have to decide in your design meetings. Here you can see a few more examples of those notations in our prop list. Like on the left, it says costume 1108 or R, which means it's a repeat. So even if a prop has already been on stage, you need to put that it's in the next scene or something like that. But you can put R that it's a repeat so that you know you don't need two laundry bags. It's just the same laundry bag reappearing. Okay, so we're going to use The Odd Couple by Neil Simon as our example to start with. Here you can see the front page of the script, and most modern scripts do this, kind of tell you a little bit about what you're getting into. So here you can see who's in the show, where it takes place, things like that. Those are important. Neil Simon plays were usually set as a contemporary, so it's kind of they took place when they were written. So here you can see this was performed in 1965. So usually this show is set in 1965 or thereabouts. But your designer or director may decide that you're doing it in the, in the 20s or in modern times or on the moon or something. And so that will affect what the props look like and what props you use. We can see here that it takes place in an apartment in New York City. So that will inform your what you choose, 60s New York City and apartment. Things like those are important things to know. And here at the bottom, we learn a little bit about kind of the passage of time. So you know it all takes place in one location, but it takes place over a period of time. And so that can have an effect on how the props are used and what props appear when. Okay, so here we get a little more information about the apartment itself. These are called stage directions. So that's explaining things that you see versus conversations that you're hearing. When a script is written and the first productions are done, the stage manager often will write down exactly what's on stage. And so stage directions in plays are often what was done that first performance. And so it doesn't have to be this way. These aren't like written in stone. It's more about telling you what they used and where things were and what worked for them. If you hear a cat, it's Turtle and she's saying hi. But your show may decide, as I said, if you do the show on the moon, then it probably won't look quite like this. So it's a way to give you a starting point and kind of know where things are in the space that they're using for the play. So here we learn a little bit about some specifics, which this is important. There are dirty dishes, discarded clothes, things piled up and around. They don't have to be these exact things, but you need the sense of the mess that these things give you. It all depends on your production, as I said before. Here at the bottom, we learn that the room is filled with smoke. Well, you're probably not going to have to be the producer of that smoke, but you need to know why that smoke is there. We'll learn later that they're smoking. And so the smoke is coming from a prop related item. So you have to keep that in mind. We also learn that they are playing poker. So you have to ask yourself, what is involved with playing poker? Is there a nice set that holds all the parts to the game? Is it just thrown in a box? Is it a Ziploc bag kind of thing? Is there a felt cover for the table? Or is it just kind of a mess? We also learn that there are 6 chairs, a table, poker chips, things like that. So you have to kind of look through all these directions and make sure you catch all the parts. So now we have some conversation happening. We're getting into action. You have to pay attention to the words that they're saying as well as what's in the stage directions. Not everything is in the stage directions and not everything is in the conversation. Like here we see that he is puffing on a cigar. That's probably where the smoke is coming from. So then you have to talk about, can we smoke on stage? How do we make a fake smoke on stage? You have a puff cigar, or is there something else producing the smoke and they're just using cigars? So you have to make notes about these kinds of things as you're going through the script. Okay, let's see what we have going on here. They're talking about some specific things. Talking about money, they're talking about cards. So you need to kind of keep track of things. The director will use this to kind of figure out how, what the action actually is. But here you can kind of see, okay, what cards are being used and who's using them, things like that. And then at lower part of this page, one of the actors says, why doesn't he fix the air conditioner? Now, there's been no mention of an air conditioner in the stage directions yet, but they talk about it in the conversation. So then, is the air conditioner something you see? Is the scene designer put it in the show somewhere? What does an air conditioner look like in an apartment in New York in the 60s? So that's a note you have to make. At the bottom, the stage directions say laundry bag, but the words say it's the same garbage from last week's game. So it doesn't have to be a laundry bag. It just needs to be more of the detritus that is in the chair. So these are things that you can decide as the action is being rehearsed, or your director or designer may have a very specific idea of what's happening. Okay, on the next page, we learn that he takes in the pot. So what does that mean? Well, they're playing poker, so it's all the money. So it's like, oh, okay, they've been betting money. So now we need to go back and see who had money, where did it come from, what does it look like? Is it in a wallet? Is it in a money clip? Is it just in their pockets? Do we see them dishing it out, or is it all just on the table when we start? So you have to pay attention to these kinds of things. Let's see the next page. Well, later in this page, sorry, we learn about some food products on stage. So this is where we get into consumables. And food is always a problem. So you have to decide how you're going to handle things like this. But the biggest questions are, is the food consumed? How much of it is consumed? Are there food allergies that your actors have that you have to consider? How messy is it going to be? Is it going to get on the costumes? Does it need to be something that won't stain? Is it washable? Things like that. And we'll get more information as this scene progresses. You can see at the bottom of that page, he opens a bottle of Coke. He says the words, who gets the Coke? So it needs to be a bottle of Coke, unless you're changing the script. But what did a bottle of Coke look like in the 60s? How is he opening this bottle of Coke? It probably wasn't a twist off lid in the 60s. So then you need a bottle opener. So these are things you have to consider that aren't even listed, that you just have to take into consideration what the action calls for. The next page, we talk about some sandwiches. And so he says, I have brown and green. Now, it's a lot of action happening on the stage. You might not have to see the brown and the green, but it's important to know these things. He does say, eat, Murray, eat. So you assume that something is being consumed. So you have to keep that in mind. And then at the bottom, we have an incident where beer explodes all over the actors on stage. So this is something you would have to figure out how is that going to be handled? How do you make a can explode on stage every night? If it's real Coke, then it's going to be sticky. It's going to get a costume. So we go back to all those questions you had to have before. So those are notes you need to make, and then a discussion has to happen with your design team. Okay, so Act 2, we're skipping ahead to Act 2 starts, and we can see here they're playing poker again, but the room is completely immaculate. It says it is immaculately clean. So you have to think about what happens between the close of the first scene and the opening of the second scene. And there's a big mess that has to be cleaned up. So you have to plan how that's going to happen. Are you going to have things on trays that could just be taken off? Is it a pile of stuff on a sheet, maybe? So you just wrap up the sheet and you clean it all off. So these are also other details that you have to pay attention to and notes that you have to take in your prop list. Okay, so that was Odd Couple. Not every play has the same beginning information. Some of it's very informative, some of it isn't as informative. This is a front page from a play called Gaslight or Angel Street. And this one tells you very specifically where the furniture is on stage. Again, for what they did and what worked for them. But here, I mean, it tells you down right, down left, on the table, center stage, things like that. So you might have that kind of information in a play. You also might have the kind of information you get from a Shakespeare play where it says, we are in King Lear's palace. And that's all you get. So what does King Lear's palace look like? Are we in the throne room? Are we in a hallway? So you have to read the script and find out. So this one, we can kind of see that these guys are talking. And then at the bottom of the page, you hear sounds a senate. So that means like trumpets, the king is coming. And then at the top, it says bearing a coronet. So if someone has a banner and then they walk in and the king is presenting and talking. So it's probably an important room. He says, give me the map. There's not a lot of stage directions in Shakespeare plays that tell you what the items are. You have to kind of listen to the words and figure out what they're doing. Again, lower down here, he says, of all these bounds, even from this line to this. So it's a map that he's pointing at and referencing. So it has to be something that the audience could see and understand what he is showing them. So it's probably a big map. We have done it at the Shakespeare Festival with a map that covered a large section of the stage. So again, there are different plays give you different information, and you have to work pretty hard to find some of that stuff in them, especially in Shakespeare plays. Okay, so here we have the prop list we saw at the beginning. And now we can look at some of the specifics that we just saw as we went through the script. As I said before, we have these notations here on the side for if it's a furniture prop or other dressing prop, things like that. These all say TOS, which is top of show, which means they're there when the show begins. A lot of this stuff you won't find out you'll find out as you read the play. It won't be there right away, or depending on how informative that first couple of pages are that we looked at, you can find a lot of that information there. But for this play, these are things you discover as you go through and you realize that the room has all these things in it at the beginning of the show. But here we can look at, like, there was a dining table. We saw that. And we put too many foggers in ours so that it looked like the smoke was coming from the poker players, but it was actually coming from the table itself to create that fog that we saw in the notes. Here are the dining chairs. We had all of ours matching. Here's some things for the drinking and the partying that was going on at the beginning. Here's that window AC unit. We didn't have any notes on it. Turtle has joined us again to help out with the prop list. Here we can see the piles of clutter, and our designer and director decided these kinds of things were specific in it. They wanted the sports paraphernalia, golf clubs, and then there were some just generic things. And here are a couple specific items that were in that pile of clutter. We see a few other things that we talked about. Cigar. So here were things that were needed for the cigar: a cigar cutter, a cigar lighter, which aren't specifically mentioned, but those are things that are going to come up. How do we do this? Did the cigar come out of a humidor? There's the pot of money. Here is the money that goes in the pot of money. Next page, we have a few more things. Here we can see some C's in front of things. So these were consumables. The beer can that's sprayed everywhere. You need a new one every night. Sandwiches that are eaten every night. How many are there? They're on a tray. There's 2 brown, 2 green, those kinds of things that we saw in the notes. So here you just get kind of an idea of how you lay it all out. You can add as many more columns as you think you need. Here we have it. Was it received in rehearsal? But am I building it? Am I buying it? How much is it going to cost? Did we have to do anything to it? Just other notes could be put. You could make as many columns as you want. We created this in Excel, but any spreadsheet kind of program could do something like this. So I hope that gives you kind of an idea about how to make a prop list, and I hope you enjoyed this and learned a few things. Thank you.